Hi, my name is Doug Anderson. I live here in South Bend and I drive a 2020 Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid plug-in minivan, and I also drive a 2018 Chevy Bolt. Yeah, so my motivation in getting the plug-in hybrid specifically was because I was a little anxious in regards to range and have that range anxiety that people call. I did first foray into my EV vehicle adventure with my Chevy Bolt. Was really comfortable with that, but felt like as a second vehicle, we needed both a large vehicle. I have a family, I'm married with 2 kids, and also just really felt as though when we go on vacations, that's when we need that room. That's when I need the convenience currently of being able to fuel up at a gasoline fuel stop. So the Pacifica Hybrid minivan really had kind of both of those capabilities together. Local range on EV only, electric fuel only, and then if I need extended range, I can just go into any fuel station and put unleaded gasoline in it. So I charge my EV with my home charging station. I have a level 2 charging station installed in my garage. And so I charge every day. They use an acronym called ABC, Always Be Charging. That is what I follow with all my vehicles. So this vehicle with my level 2 charger can have a full battery within 2 hours. So even if I go on a trip in the morning and I didn't use that much range, I never know where I may be going in the afternoon. So I just plug it in all the time, always be plugged in. So that's where I charge predominantly. It doesn't support DC fast charging because you have gasoline, so that's not necessary. And so when I'm out in the road, out of town, I may level 2 charge for convenience, like if the opportunity presents itself and I'm not taking a charger. But otherwise, I don't really charge other than at home. Yeah, so being a hybrid vehicle, it still has the gasoline drivetrain and, fuel, oil, filters, all the things that an EV would not have. So the maintenance cycle on it does exist. On this vehicle, I need to change, like the oil change needs to be done at least every year or 12,000 miles. I do it a little bit more frequently than that, but that's the manufacturer's recommendation. Because the more miles you drive on electric mode only, obviously that doesn't put any wear or tear on the engine. So that's why that maintenance interval is longer. But in any case, even oil will break down just over time. So the manufacturer wants you to change it at least once a year. So I follow those recommendations. So the vehicle that this replaced was a Chevy Traverse, which is like a large 3-row SUV. So that's why we really were looking for that kind of capacity. The range in that vehicle on a full tank was probably about 300 miles. I mean, honestly, at highway speeds and driving, we go on trips a lot. That vehicle, I only got about 22 miles per gallon highway. Not great, not bad. So the range in this vehicle, if both the battery and the fuel tank are full, is about 400 miles. And it gets on the trips that we go on, so where I'm driving way over, like 600, 700 miles on those trips, I very frequently get a miles per gallon of 30. So it's a lot better even fuel efficiency, even when you're using primarily fuel on a 400 plus mile trip. The most miles that were electric only were 30 maybe. So it's a much more fuel efficient configuration also. So we have 2 vehicles in total. Again, I have the Chevy Bolt. I did buy that first. That was my first kind of foray into the electric vehicles, and really was prompted by my first investment in putting rooftop solar on my home. So I started to think more about other ways I could utilize that solar energy I'm producing. So I got my Chevy Bolt first. And then when it came time to kind of replace our traditional gasoline SUV, that's when I was looking at something of that size that would be electric, but again, still have the range and flexibility of a gasoline. So plug-in hybrid is really where we went. The longest trip we've taken in this vehicle, we go to South Carolina every summer. So we do that. I think that's about 900 miles. We've been to Orlando, Florida twice in it, and to Denver once in it. So that's the longest trip. The nice thing about most battery electric or battery plug-in hybrids is they are heavier because the battery pack is heavier. I mean, this is a very large vehicle. It's meant to be smooth anyhow, But even with that added weight, it rides very smooth, and it's a very well handling vehicle because of the low center of gravity associated with the battery. So it's a very comfortable vehicle to ride in for long trips. You know, the hardest thing with EV adoption and my friends and family, there was definitely a lot of misconceptions about, wow, you can't charge that thing, or what are you going to do when the battery dies? Or like the battery has to get replaced every couple years, right? And isn't that the cost of the whole vehicle? And a lot of misconceptions, obviously, that, as there's more EV adoption, is being, clarified and communicated much more clearly. The interesting thing with this van specifically, though, is my wife, it's really more of her daily driver. We share it, but she probably drives it more than me. And she was like, never will I get a minivan. Like, there was this minivan stigma, right? But I convinced her to go to the test drive, and she drove it and was like, hey, I really, really like this car. Even though the car it was replacing really wasn't that old. It wasn't just kind of like, oh, I like it because it's not broke down or rusty or anything like that. It really was. It had power. It had comfort. It really had the room. Yeah, I would give, there's some specific advice I think about plug-in hybrids. I do think it's a transitionary technology. I really look forward to when this has gotten some age, that perhaps advancements in the battery EV technology will be such that we could consider replacing it with something about the same size that's affordable and economical and is solely electric based. There's a lot that goes on under the hood. And the engineering is neat, and it's really, certainly advanced. But I do worry that with hybrid vehicles, there's a little bit more mechanics and things to go wrong and things that could perhaps cause issues. So I do look forward to the technology advancing beyond that. That being said, I haven't had any vehicle issues, right? I think manufacturers are going to put out products that they are able to represent in warranty, right? So that's really a really good thing. But I really think electric vehicles, at the end of the day, they can save you a lot of money. I mean, they're really good for the environment also, right? But I think that when our economy starts to shift away from, subsidization of fuel and oil, and there'll be a purpose and use for those things, I think, in our commercial society. But I think for individuals, these types of vehicles can actually be substantially lower operating costs. And if you can buy the right vehicle, not the luxury lines and the top trim models, you can get them at prices that actually aren't too much more higher than a standard gasoline vehicle. So I would say that, I would advise people to just be mindful of, when you go to shop for an electric vehicle, you don't have to look just at the premium brands. And obviously all the manufacturers want you to buy those because those are high margin vehicles for them. But look at, especially now with the tax credit situation supporting used vehicles, look at used EVs, look at entry-level EVs that are coming out or soon to come out, and keep your eyes focused on them. Yeah, so I did buy this vehicle here at a local dealer in the Michiana area. I was shopping around beforehand online and calling perhaps some dealers that were outside of our market. But when I went to the local dealership, and certainly as any dealership's going to be, once you're there, they're really going to want to talk to you a lot and negotiate. But I went there primarily just to physically drive the vehicle and make sure it was something that I liked how it drove and everything. I'd like to see the city incorporate more subsidies or grants or programs to help builders, both on the commercial level and even like multifamily dwelling builders, to incentivize them to put in level 2 charging at their locations. Because I think anyone that's an individual, residence owner, private residence owner, it's not very costly to put in your own level 2 charger. It's very easily done. The problem is those who don't own their property and therefore don't have the right to actually do that, right? So we really need, I think the city could play a very strong role in helping, again, those types of investors that are building those locations to not necessarily fund them, but again, make available grants or other ways to make them incentivized to put in that infrastructure themselves. Again, I own kind of American brands, right? They're not premium models, so there's some EVs that have some really neat, gadgets and stuff like that. But what I think is probably the premier thing about a plug-in hybrid or an EV is the driver experience. So even though they may have what they call a transmission, because people just commonly know what that language means, they're actually not like transmissions in any other car around. So the engine doesn't really shift. So you have constant power at any point in the pedal where you want it, and when you push it, it just goes. I mean, you know, so you find that it's a much more driver in control situation, and it's very nice. When I find myself in an ICE-powered vehicle, that isn't often, but like a rental or somebody else's car, it feels like you're driving a school bus. It feels like you're going back to the Stone Age. Just like, oh my God, like what is the car doing right now? You know, because these vehicles don't do that. And so it's really, I think, a nice driver experience.